Alright, gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Eternal Heatwave. And we are gonna have to talk about, one of the favorite subjects of this channel, which is, of course, the crumbling American alliance structure. So, you may have noticed recently that the United States has ceased interceptor rocket deliveries to Ukraine for the Patriot missile system. Patriot missile defense is, well, it's been called the best air defense system on the planet, bar none. It is a symbol of American might. It's a symbol of American military prowess, and I'm not one of these people who say that Americans can't fight. No, actually, they are very competent, very capable fighters. And the Patriot is really the best system. And that used to be deployed to Ukraine, but now it's brought into question because the ammunition, the interceptors, the delivery of interceptors has been frozen as a result of basically the Trump administration's pro-Russia policy. And specifically, it's a man named Elbridge Colby who stopped this. And Elbridge Colby is one of these people who are like saying that we should deprioritize Ukraine, we should focus on fighting China, because Russia is not our enemy, China is. This is incredibly stupid on its face. Like, this is a stupid man saying stupid things because he is stupid. That's... How many times did I say stupid? It's not enough. This is like unbelievably ridiculous and stupid beliefs, because China's principal ally is Russia. So every time Russia loses, China loses too. Defeating Russia is a defeat for China. But this guy seems to believe that America needs to withhold interceptor rockets for Ukraine because, well, we might need them for China, ignoring the fact that the Chinese are monitoring the Ukraine conflict with great intensity, and they're going to decide their next course of action depending on how the Ukraine conflict goes. And for my part, now I cannot prove this, but I believe that if Ukraine defeats Russia, then the Chinese are going to hit Russia. They're going to seize outer Manchuria, which is still under Russian control, and of course the Chinese Communist Party considers part of China. And if Russia wins, the Chinese are going to hit Taiwan. So the best way to protect Taiwan, if I am right, which, like I said, this is just based on my reading on the situation. You may have a different reading, but if I am right, then the best way to protect Taiwan would be for Ukraine to defeat Russia, which would signal to the Chinese that it is in fact Russia who is weak and not the West, so the Chinese will strike against Russia. But nobody takes this into account because up in MAGA world, Russia is the good guys and Ukraine is just liberal Democrats, Biden, Burisma, Hunter Biden penis. These people do not live in reality. They live in what, others have called the Fox News cinematic universe. It's a parallel reality where, well, we know more or less what they believe. They're delusional, they cannot be reasoned with, and they're just fucking stupid. And it's like we have not had this combination of disconnected from reality and unable to process basic information in a long time, yet here we fucking are. And that would be bad enough news in of itself. We have already commented on that as regards to Europe, but now two countries which are core American allies are now responding to this stimulus, and those would be Japan and Australia. So let's start with Australia. The Australians are not very comfortable with what Coleridge has done at the Department of Defense because, well, they actually depend on America. They're hoping that America would help them defend themselves against the Chinese, and this wouldn't be the first time they have faced a menace from the north. In 1941 and 1940, I believe, as well, like in the Second World War, the Japanese faced an invasion from Japan, and that Japan had a very explicit agenda of exterminating white people from the Pacific Rim. And of course the Australians, they're mostly white, they're 90-something% white in 42, in 41, and they were very concerned about this. And when they saw that the United Kingdom couldn't defend them, they turned to the Americans. And that's really the beginning of the U.S.-Australian friendship and alliance, it was done to beat back this, well, let's face it, racial enemy coming in from the north. Now, the Japanese have now calmed the fuck down after having been very vigorously spanked in 45, but the Chinese have not calmed down, and they have the similar racial resentment towards white people, and the nearest white people to China are Australians. So there is of course always that risk. And Elbridge Colby has now put the AUKUS project under review. This is going to review it. Is this America first? What does that mean? So AUKUS, for those of you that don't know, is a joint project by the United Kingdom, United States, and Australia to build nuclear submarines for the Pacific Ocean, specifically to be operated by Australia. It was actually a big controversy when it was launched because it broke the very old, very lucrative French-Australian deal to make diesel-electric submarines. So France was manufacturing diesel-electric submarines for the Australians, but the Americans and Brits undercut the French. They basically ordered the Australians, okay, now we're doing this thing, because I forget what exactly was the stimulus. I think it was China launching a new nuclear submarine or something. But in any case, like, it lit a fire under everyone's ass about China's ambitions towards Australia, so the Australians sided with the Americans and the British and sidelined the French, which was a mistake on Australia's part. At the time, I really considered it. But now I think the Australian government is also realizing, hold on a second, we have gone into bed with a highly unreliable ally known for electing psychotic toddlers to the presidency, and now we're reaping the consequences. And of course, this is becoming very problematic. If AUKUS is rejected the same way that the supply of interceptors to Ukraine was rejected by the Pentagon, and if one illiterate cocksucker like Elbridge Colby in the Pentagon can stop this, well, you know, what else is possible? What else is Australia what else does Australia have to look towards, right, in its struggle against China with this very unreliable ally known as the United States? You know, maybe they were better off with the French, man. Or the French, maybe they don't know how to build nuclear submarines, but they'll deliver their fucking submarines. You know, the French keep their word, unlike their Americans. And now the second ally which is re-examining its relationship with America is Japan. Japan has the world's second largest navy after the Americans, and they have a vested interest in keeping the Chinese where they are. You know, it's a little bit like that episode of The Sopranos where he's busting out Dave Scatino, where he says to Davey, you know, get back to your fucking hole. Well, that's what Japan would like to do to the Chinese. Get back in your fucking hole, China. And to do that, they're going to need an ally who can help them win air-sea dominance in the liminal seas of China, the South China Sea, right? Because basically you can bottle China up from the sea, and because China is already bottled up by land, it's bounded by very harsh mountains and impassable deserts on all sides. The Chinese need access to the sea to trade with the rest of the world. So if you can cut them off from the sea, you basically isolate the Chinese and you can starve them out. Well, and of course the Japanese have a very big vested interest in keeping Taiwan safe. They own a lot of the chip manufacturing there, so they need Taiwan, and they were always hoping that they would have the assistance of the United States when it came to assisting, defending and assisting Taiwan. But now it turns out that the United States is in the mood to betray its allies, even its long-term allies. If they're ready to betray Ukraine and they're ready to put, Australia on review, then of course they're going to betray Japan. And Japan, of course, the Japanese, they all have their own territorial dispute with Russia over in the Kuril Islands, what the Japanese call the Northern Territories. There's also Sakhalin Island, which has a Japanese minority. They're the Ainu people. They're not exactly Yamato. Let's not get into the demographics of Japan right now. Suffice to say that Japan has an interest in all these outlying islands. Well, it looks like America is no longer a reliable ally, so both Canberra and Tokyo are re-examining their relationship with Washington. And for good reason. Why? Because, well, It's not, like I said in the last video, it's not just that the current American administration is doing these stupid things, right? That would be bad enough, but we are dealing with an America which is electing these kinds of stupid-ass people. These kinds of self-destructive people who don't understand the value of alliances. And now I'm really sick of hearing people say Donald Trump is tough on China. People who are tough on China do not cooperate with Chinese crypto scammers like Justin Sun, and they do not undermine their own principal allies in the Indo-Pacific region, such as Australia and Japan. If Donald Trump were really preparing to take on China, he would be doing everything in his power to reassure Japan and Australia that, you know, actually we have your back. We're going to go in together, three mighty nations, you know, US, Japan, Australia. Yeah, the British can tag along if they want. We're going to fuck the Chinese up. But that's not the message we're getting. And the reason is because Donald Trump, as an authoritarian criminal, actually has a sort of comedy with his fellow authoritarian criminal Xi Jinping. And he dislikes the Japanese and the Australians for belonging to the free world. He would much rather, you know, be that Australia and Japan had their own criminal, stupid dictators as heads of state. Someone who would be more like him. So of course, these two countries are going to be sold down the road by the United States. And all I can really suggest that, you know, you should caucus with Europe. Right now, we don't have much of expeditionary capability, but that can change in the future. The world can be very different in the future. But for the time being, yeah. Japan and Australia, they are very quickly learning that you should not ally yourself with a country which routinely elects psychotic toddlers, you know, retarded B-list actors, and just, well, whatever the fuck Bush was. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk, and stay strong, Japan and Australia. We are, help is on its way, maybe 10 years from now.